spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up, baby. Tonight we gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up now.
Welcome to the HVAC Guide live show where we talk about all things HVAC. We give you tips. Let's see. Sorry, I'm losing my spot here because my computer's acting wonky. Oh, gotta love a good live show. We will be answering some of your questions live. Sometimes we are joined by other pros in the chat who might know answers to questions that I don't. And finally, we have breakout segments where we go over funny clips, industry news, and goofy inventions. But before we get the show started with tonight's crazy story in the news, let's take a moment to pay the bills and thank the sponsor of the show. I wanted to take a quick break from the video and thank the sponsor of this video, AeroSeal. Leaky ductwork is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, energy wasters in most homes in the United States. And my favorite way of fixing that problem is AeroSeal. They'll come into your home, they'll test your ductwork and how leaky it is. They'll seal all the ductwork with a machine, and then they'll test it again and make sure that you got what you paid for. Customers have reported a significant savings on their energy bills after using AeroSeal. I'll put a link down in the description of this video. Thanks again to AeroSeal, and now let's get back to the video. So I'm flying a little solo tonight, guys. No guests tonight, but I do have a really good show for you guys. I wanted to start the show out with, I've got a thing set up that will send me different stories in the news revolving around HVAC and air conditioning and all these different things. That's where I get a lot of when we do our live shows and I, talk about different things in the news. And this story, I think, based on the website, it says Cyprus, which before I say the wrong thing, I believe Cyprus is, bear with me, it's somewhere in Europe, but before I say for sure, it's not. Of course, it's not coming up right now. Unbelievable. This has been the craziest. I'm off my game. But anyway, this story comes from, it says Philly News in Cyprus. And then when I search this particular hospital, it's not in America. So it is, here we go. So Cyprus is its own, I guess, country just south of Turkey. So I don't know if that's a part of another country or if Cyprus is all on its own. But when I look at a map, let me show you guys this.
So when I look at a map, this is where that hospital is. Not that it really matters, but I just thought it might be good to give it a little context because this is a crazy story that I came across. So it says, and again, I'm probably not going to pronounce these things correctly, so I apologize. The Famagusta General Hospital allegedly asked a man to take his mother's lifeless body home and turn on the air conditioning because they had informed him the air conditioning in the hospital mortuary was not working. This is what the man reported in a letter to the Ministry of Health and the Attorney General. Speaking on Alpha TV, the family's lawyer, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, recounted the events of the case, stating that the family's first complaint concerns the ambulance call system, and the second is against the Amacostos mortuary and hospital staff. Specifically, the lawyer mentioned the man found his mother unconscious at her home on February 1st and called 112 but received no response. And then he called the Famagusta General Hospital and was referred to 112 again. So 112, is that like 911 for them? Probably. Explaining that they did not respond to his calls. Finally, he was given another number and called Ambulance Coordination Center, and with the ambulance arriving within 5 minutes when it was discovered that the woman was dead. Subsequently, on the same day, the son of the deceased was summoned to testify at the Durinia police station, and while giving his testimony to exclude the possibility of malicious action, he received a call from the Famagusta General Hospital informing him that due to physical size of the deceased, she could not fit in the freezer box, and that the air conditioning in the special room where they would place her was not functioning. So crazy story about air conditioning, right? I do a lot of different stories concerning the HVAC industry itself and things like that, but this is just one of the most oddest stories. Hospital staff urged the son of the deceased to go to the hospital, collect his mother's body, and transport her himself to a room with air conditioning. Meanwhile, according to the complaint, the two police officers before whom the discussion took place reported that the son of the deceased, that they were called by the hospital to pick up the body with the patrol car and transfer it to another hospital where the freezer box might fit. The next day, the hospital official from Famagusta called the son of the deceased again and tried to persuade him to bury his mother on the same day instead of the scheduled day because, as he was told, the deceased would start to smell since the air conditioning was not working. So I remember there were times in my career when, we had to make emergency repairs, right? I worked for an electric company one time and we had to scramble there was actually a hospital that wasn't an air conditioning issue. It was an electrical issue. Of course, when you've got people on life-saving equipment, life preserving equipment, that's a problem, right? And but I don't think I've ever heard of anything like this. The family called a funeral home, and a person who went to the hospital to pick up the deceased noticed alteration in the body and wondered why she was not placed in the freezer box, as in his opinion, she would easily fit. In a statement, the health insurance organization states that it has not received any complaints about the incident. Quote, according to the information we have from public statements, a letter was sent to the Ministry of Health and the Attorney General, and therefore the organization does not wish to make any statement at this stage, it says. So again, I don't know much about Cyprus. I don't know, if this is normal, if this is a normal occurrence, but just crazy. What an odd story revolving around air conditioning. And this is recent. This is May 29th, or maybe that's today's date. So that's not when this was written. So it's May 29th there. It's still May 28th here, but it's May 29th already over there. So that's interesting. What a crazy world. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the chat. I'd love to hear them. But yeah, crazy story there. Let me get our chat going here tonight. Good to see you guys. All of you that are joining us. Of course, Ryan, always here and keeping me on my toes. Good to see you. Um, do you read the AHR News or PV Magazine? I get the one. It's called the News, and I believe the name of the actual company is ACHR News. Um, but I met a lady at an airport one time that I recognized from ACHR News. And so I got to chatting with her and I was like, I love your stuff, you know? And she said, or I started asking her about, the magazine and stuff. And of course, what she was doing. And she told me that the company that owns ACHR News and does these magazines actually produces several magazines. It's like 11 of them or something. I don't know what the actual number is. Maybe it's only 7, but it's multiple different magazines. And so I don't read the PV, but I wonder if the company that does these also writes that one. I think again they write several different types depending on what trade you're in and all of that. But I do read their stuff. And they have some really good stuff. I really enjoy it actually. It's near Greece and Turkey. Josh says, "Nice headline." What? Yeah, yeah. Welcome to the show, by the way. What a crazy show so far. Ryan says, "Do you think that zoning for non-communicating variable systems hurt HVAC systems? I've heard even with a bypass, having more than 2 zones on one system that cannot vary the capacity is harmful." I've often thought that too, Ryan. Um, it's something that I feel like a lot of guys don't talk about enough, but we've always, when ductwork's undersized, right, and there's a high static, guys will talk about breakdowns because of that. But when you only have, say, one zone, let's say you've got a heating and air system with 4 zones, it's not modulating. So not modulating dampers, not variable speed motor, any of that. And how that system at times is starving for air. Literally. It's, not enough air being blown across that coil. I think it's a great topic. It's something that again that we don't talk about enough, and it's not like they don't know it's happening because of creations such as bypass, dampers, things like temperature sensors that will open zones or literally turn the system off if if it starts to freeze up. Um, yeah, I think so. Do you think zoning for non-communicating systems hurts the HVAC system? I do. I think that it's hard on that system. All in all, I think it's hard on the compressor. I think it's hard on the motor, the indoor fan motor. I don't think it's talked about enough. But I do think that it's part of the reason a lot of guys will avoid zoning at times. Which I think it could be argued. In fact, I've done YouTube videos that if a system is installed properly and it's not multiple levels, then there are times when guys are installing zoning and maybe you don't necessarily need zoning unless you're just looking for absolute maximum comfort. Comfort meaning you have the one member of the family that spends more time in this room and they like it cooler, and then you have another member of the family that spends more time in another room and they like it warmer, right? But all in all, I do think what you're pointing out there is a real thing, and I don't think it's talked about enough in our industry. Guys talk about undersized ductwork and all the problems that can come along with that, but they don't talk about the fact that zoning adds a whole level of challenges among wear and tear on the system itself. Josh says maybe he had a walk-in freezer at home. Maybe they were like, well, you have a better setup than we do. You take your mama home. Let's see. PV seems to focus more on global HVAC. I've probably seen their stuff. I do have there is a website that I follow. I'm wanting to say it's called Informed HVAC or something to that variation, and they're a European website, and I like some of their content. They'll do global stories. What is that website called? Informed HVACinformed.com. I think this is the right one. And so they do a good job too because they do stories here in the US, in North America. Um and I'm not sponsored by these guys, so I'm not giving them a plug necessarily on that front. But they also do stories um in other parts of the world. So let's see. I'm trying to find a good example of that. We have so much going on here in America that sometimes you'll see a lot of American stuff on there. But there is a story here in Saudi Arabia, right here, good example of that. And then again, I'll see stories specifically in Europe, only affecting Europe at times that they'll have on this website. So this is another website I like to go to sometimes that you guys can check out if you ever want to. They've got some good stuff on there sometimes. Let's see. Arch says howdy from Arizona. Howdy to Arch. Arch, did you get that system installed? And I apologize if you've already said so, but I know you had said at one point you were pulling the trigger finally. And so if you did, how did it go? Everything good? Ryan says seems like the right answer is a system that can vary the capacity being sent to each zone. Yeah, there's some of these communicating systems have the ability to modulate those dampers. Obviously, it's communicating. So the system itself is going to optimize the airflow and ramp down if only one zone is calling. And I think that ultimately that's the best way to go these days, right? If you absolutely have to have zoning, which some houses do. If you're not going to install multiple systems, then you have to have something to zone that system, and so that's ultimately, if we're not talking about mini splits and having, each zone have a head, an indoor unit, ducted or non-ducted, then we're talking about dampers that control each duct. Arch says, I had a 1-ton 18 SEER mini split installed in the bedroom and was hoping to have a 2-ton installed in the living room. Interesting. Oh, so you didn't replace the package unit yet, Arch? I thought you said that you were replacing it finally, that you had pulled the trigger, but I could be wrong. What do you think the most accurate, widely available thermostat? My Nest seems to overshot even after moving it. I think I might need to add duct seal putty behind the thermostat. I struggle with that question sometimes. I seem to have it's sort of like athletes. Sometimes I have more athletes that I would rather not watch than watch, right? Um and so even like movies, right? I have certain actors that I would prefer not to watch versus one's favorites, if you will. And so because of that, like thermostats, I have multiple thermostats that, and I'm not going to mention which ones here, but I do have some thermostats that I just specifically do not like for one reason or another. Any of these thermostats that your power company can control peak run times, I'm just not a fan. It's the calls that the heat and air guys will get is, oh, my system's not running. And I understand why they have that capability and why the power company has that program. But at the end of the day, uh, I'm just not a fan. I think that there are better ways to save energy than to have your power company control whether or not you're allowed to have heat or AC that day. Just my thoughts, you know. Um, I would say look into some of the upper end Honeywell stuff. Look into the upper end Cincy stuff, the Cincy 2. Those are some of the ones that we installed at my company and liked. Arch says we got the runaround from the HVAC contractor, so we decided to go with the mini split route, waiting for the Daikin got packed unit. Probably fit. Daikin fit packed unit. You might be waiting longer than you think, Arch, but that's good. So at least you've got some sort of relief. The heat is, I would assume, in Arizona, it's probably here. Because here in Virginia, we're starting to see days above 80 degrees. And I know you guys see hotter days than we do. So Arch is like me. I just added the mini split in the bedroom. I want to see all the new refrigerant systems get released and wait a year after that to see what works best and then decide. I don't think you guys are alone on that. I think I've talked to multiple folks that are in the know that if 410 is getting phased down, it's going to go up in price, right? That's common sense. How much? Who knows? But if it is going to go up in price, I know a lot of homeowners that are waiting and are band-aiding and, buying time right now, sometimes literally, they're buying time, and waiting for these new refrigerant systems to come out. And for those of you that don't know, we are in the middle of it. 410 is getting phased down by the beginning of next year. 410, you will not be able to buy a full 410A system starting January. You'll still be able to get some of the equipment, but buying a full system anymore will become a thing of the past. And so, depending on what brand you go with, they'll either have an R32 or 454B system, and you're going to have these systems with new refrigerants. And so, a lot of homeowners are waiting. They're waiting till this new equipment comes out, and they're making decisions based on that, based on buying time. Getting hot close to 100 degrees. Shoo-wee. Shoo-wee. Research the GRE packaged unit. Josh says, waiting for the sticker shock coming with the new cold climate Bosch heat pumps. I'm not familiar with that, Josh. So they're coming out with a whole new line. Is this different from the cold climate heat pump Bosch? Is this different from the IDS stuff that they've had out? Or is this more of the same, but maybe a more efficient, maybe? Or maybe that's just what they're calling it, and it's going to have the new refrigerants in it. Products. I'm looking at their website right now. All new across the board. I believe some areas in the country have them in stock already, just not here in Pacific Northwest yet. Got it. Yeah, I follow Bosch a little bit. In fact, the company that I now teach classes at to other heating and air professionals, Bosch is one of the brands that they offer. So I have not heard as much about that, but that's interesting to hear. It's called the X-Pac or Pack. When I was a kid, there was a wrestler on TV that they called him X-Pac. Frank, welcome to the show. I wish I would have known that 410 was getting phased out a couple of years ago. I would have held off on my new system. Yeah, I mean, they kind of knew it was coming. So 2021 was the first year that they phased down 410. So the AIM Act came out just before that. And so last year is when they stepped it down 40%. And I have not seen a humongous spike in cost for 410A yet, even with that reduction. But I bet it's coming. And as soon as they start running out of it is when it'll go up. And then you'll see people making decisions off of that. But yeah, so that's the timeline of things. Starting next year, 410 a full 410A system will be gone. You'll still be able to buy the equipment, but if buying a full system, you just won't be able to do it. And then right now, I'm reluctant to say this because I bet it will change. But right now, during this conversation, the timeline is starting 2026, January 1st, 2026. You won't even be able to get 410A equipment. Now, what that'll look like, I don't know. Will we be able to buy dry charged equipment like we could with R22 for years, after R22 equipment no longer came out with the refrigerant in the system? Or will it be completely gone? We will see. So, let's see. All new. Josh is new. It's a new, larger design. Okay. I wonder if Medea is still be the one producing it. It's on the website. Google Bosch cold climate heat pump. I did that, and it looked to me like the same stuff came up. But of course, I'm just skimming it quickly on a live show. I guess you have a link filter on. PV Magazine had a good article on the Bosch cold climate systems back on January 16th. Got it. Okay. Well, actually, I think I do remember that. They came out and said that their heat pumps will be able to produce heat down to whatever temperature it was. And I do remember that vaguely, that had come out. We might see how feasible it is to convert a linen closet into a air handler closet to possibly go with a split system like the Fit. So what then, Arch? Do you have that system on your roof? I guess you'd have to have that repaired. You'd have to have the space, uh, you know, roofed. I guess that's the word, roofed over. Um, we don't put package units on roofs here. So that whole concept is foreign to me. Josh says it's 100% down to negative 15 and operation down to negative 25. That's pretty good. That that alone would allow it to operate at least in most of the lower 48 states, right? There's probably exceptions to that rule, but negative 15 degrees still producing 100% capacity. A lot of folks don't know all heat pumps produce heat at lower temperatures. It's the capacity loss that they don't talk about enough. So they'll say, oh, well, this system will operate down to negative 4 degrees. We'll see that sometimes advertised. Well, okay, it will operate down that cold, but what's your capacity at that temperature, right? And so that's what a lot of folks are. I'll say that they used to overlook it, but now I think because that's a thing, you'll see more guys looking closer at that. And I say guys meaning guys and gals in our industry, move if you're seeing those temperatures. Yeah. Just out of curiosity, Josh, where do you live? If you're waiting on the new cold climate heat pump to come out, I would say if you're like, especially if you're in the South, or if you're really lower than, most of the middle states, the flyover states, if you're lower that middle of the country or lower, I would say more chances than not, you're not even going to need backup heat strips when you start using cold climate heat pumps below 0 degrees. I forgot about removing the package unit and the roof work, so it might be more trouble than it's worth. Maybe not, you know. You can always get it priced both ways. And then you don't have to worry about your system sitting out baking in the sun trying to produce cold air inside your house. I think that's another thing that's always been interesting to me about package units that are on the roof, especially in those hot states. I don't understand why they do it, to be completely honest with you, but I don't live there, so maybe that's why I don't understand it. I'm sure they have their reasons, but I wonder if they do it because swamp coolers are such a big thing out there, and so they're used to putting everything on the roof. And of course that does lend itself to not taking up so much, real estate on the ground, but you can always install wall brackets, right? If you did go with a split system, split heat pump wall brackets. So you could always install your system on one of these wall brackets, especially if you have a side discharge unit like this. All the systems are going to this. If we have the same show 10 years from now, I would dare say, you want to hear a bold prediction? I don't think it's that bold, but a bold prediction is most systems sold 10 years from now are all going to have where the fan blows out the front. And I mean that for conventional systems, right? We're used to seeing these for mini splits, but you're going to start seeing this. We're already seeing it, right? Almost all the major brands offer, like we sold Daikin at my company. Daikin came out with the Daikin Fit, and it blows out the front. And all the major brands have some variation of this. But 10 years from now, 10, 15 years from now, I don't even think traditional unitary trash can style systems that blow out the top, I don't even think you're going to see those installed new. The carbon footprint alone, the materials that are saved by installing one of these types of systems is significantly higher or lower, less, less materials than a unitary system for the same amount of capacity. And I don't have any data that shows that, but it's just kind of common sense, you know. Um yeah, so you can install wall brackets and then you don't have to worry about it being on the ground and taking up any space, right? Even in this picture where the system is close to the ground, you know, even in this picture, technically it's not taking up any real estate there on the ground. It's still kind of in the way, maybe a little bit, but anyway, I see a lot of problems with this install actually of this system, including the seal tight not being strapped. That's not good. That's not to code right there. So anyway, crazy, crazy, crazy. Let's go back to our chat here. Feel free to drop in the chat any questions that you have regarding heating and air. We are going to have our first breakout segment in just a moment. But let me get back to our questions here. Josh says, even the Bosch IDS units have pretty good cold climate abilities. Only a few matchups have that designation, though. Even the ones that don't still maintain a good 67% of max capacity at 7 degrees. Midwest has strange weather, super hot summers, bitter cold winters. It'll be easier to think with a clear head once our living room is cooler. I'm sure. Don't install those wall brackets unless it's on a garage wall or room not frequented. I have heard horror stories from that where the vibration of that system. So you've got to be mindful of that. Our mini split is on wall brackets. Yeah, I've heard horror stories of folks attaching them to the wall only to have all kinds of noise issues, among other things. So, what pressure R32A working pressure would be and its vapor charge? Um, Joel, I think what you're asking is what are the pressures of R32? All in all, they're comparable to 410. They're a little higher working pressures, but we're talking within 10 psi. So overall, very, very similar. In fact, 410A is R32 mixed with, it's a blend of R32 and 125. So pressures are very close to that of 410A. Let's see. We're gonna have our first breakout segment of the night. Bear with me here. This has already been done. Make sure that I've got the right one set up here before I switch it over. Give me just a second here. Do 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 do. I think I already showed that on another show. So give me just a second here. Yeah, here we go. All right, so let me show you guys this. And this is tonight's crazy clip. Tonight's crazy clip is this is a do-it-yourselfer husband, and he is in this it looks like a air handler or possibly an electric furnace. Make sure you guys can see this. And watch this. Is that almost kind of looks like it might be, is that an oil burner down there? Not really sure, but if you notice there, he gets a little bit of a boom. So I don't know if that's an electrical boom or if it is an oil burner, some other kind of boom. But hopefully he's okay. But yeah, it says for the husband that thinks he can fix anything and the wife that is dumb enough to let him try. Cheers. So let's see if I can get this playing to play again. Come on. Watch him as he goes. Man, their faces lit up. Watch that. Let me see if I can get that. Can I get that? Their whole faces. It's hard to catch it there. I'm not gonna be able to catch it. But if you watch their faces, their whole faces light up. Wait, did you see that blast? Man, that is crazy, guys. Yeah, hopefully they're okay. And it's DIY is something we've talked about on my my channel a lot. A lot of folks out there are taking matters into their own hand for one reason or another, whether it's to save money or it's, they don't have confidence in the heating and air folks that they're hiring anyway. And so they take things into their own hands only to put themselves at risk. So hopefully they were okay. Crazy video there. Let's see. Back to our chat. Frank says, I have watched your show for years. Thank you for that. And it helped me choose what system I got and my HVAC company. This is my first time on your live show. Thank you. Well, welcome to the show, Frank. I appreciate that. Josh says the quick sling stands are better in most cases. Still raise the unit way up and you aren't vibrating the structure. So quick sling stand. Let's look that up. Is that a brand? Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, I've seen these. In fact, I think we used one time on one job. We, for whatever reason, we had to get the unit up, and I'll be completely honest with you, and I might be in the minority here. I don't like the looks of them, but I don't have to like the looks of it, right? As long as it's very functional. And maybe it's just so much maybe the reason I don't like it is just cuz it looks so much more different than everything else. And maybe after it grows on you for a while, some of the snow legs I'm not particularly fond of, to be honest with you. But but still a good point. It's functional. It's getting the system off the ground, and you don't have to worry about the whole vibration thing compared to this is a good picture because this is kind of going over options. It's actually of another YouTube video, it says. So there's the quick sling, there's directly on pad, there's the rubber um, elevation. I'm not sure the verbiage, but getting that unit off the ground. And then there's your wall brackets. So you kind of got all four right there in the picture, and you can pick which one you like best. I think you're right. They're very functional, but I've never been in love with the way they look. So we never used them at my company, partly because we never needed to. We were able to install a lot of units on the ground. We didn't have to worry about getting them off the ground in a lot of cases. In the event that we had to get it off the ground, there were times we would have to build platforms in flood zones. So there's so many flat roofs out here and narrow lots. Many houses with swamp coolers on the roof and furnaces in the hallway were easily converted to split systems. Got it. Got it. Okay. With wall brackets, how much does it vibrate houses? Does it depend on the outside, brick, stucco, etc.? Um, I think the answer to your question is yes. I've seen houses that were brick, and as long as you installed it on the brick in a certain manner, you had to worry about it less. Whereas houses that, where I live, there's a lot of houses that have vinyl siding. And if you're not mindful of it, you can rattle that house pretty good. So Arch says the noise isn't that bad. Hard to quantify. Best if it's a living room or bedroom to use a stand that doesn't attach to the structure. Ryan says, wow, in her face. Yeah, I can smell the burnt hair from here. And it looks like an oil furnace. Yeah. Yeah, that burner looked kind of. There's definitely some sort of burner there, but that doesn't look like a traditional Beckett burner to me, right? It doesn't have the, the what do they call it? The magnahelic or whatever that transformer that puts all that voltage down through the electrodes that normally sits up here. That just doesn't look like the normal Beckett burner that I'm used to seeing there. So, but there's definitely some sort of burner there. I had a compressor saver blow up on me last week. Lucky I wasn't right in front of it. Yeah. Uh, I, I've seen things like that before, and you're just like, man, I'm just glad I wasn't there, right? Because there's certainly plenty of things that could have happened, right? Let's see. Just jumping through some of y'all's messages. How long have you been an HVAC technician? So I went to school to be an electrician originally. And so I did just strictly electrical for 4 years. And then I worked at a plumbing company for a couple years. And then I ended up at a company that did all three. So electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. So to answer your question, just over 20 years. How long does it take to be an HVAC technician? Well, I mean, I think you could probably find some companies that would hire as long as you're, willing to work hard, somebody with no experience. But how long does it take to become a service tech, a good service tech? I would argue that anyone with less than 5 years of experience probably is. I think everyone is still learning. Any good HVAC technician will tell you that they're still learning, that they don't know everything. But even still, I can't imagine anyone with less than 5 years of experience being that great of a service technician. We all make mistakes. They're gonna probably make more of them. just the truth of it. My mini split is installed on rubber riser feet to protect from the landscaper slinging mulch and pine straw, among other things, probably. Almost looks like a manufactured home burner. Do you sell propane furnace? Well, I used to work for a company that did, or I used to own a company that did, but not anymore. um, in fact, actually, let me back up on that. Technically, the answer is no. We did not sell propane furnaces. We would sell furnaces that could be converted to work with propane. So I would say 90% of the furnaces we would, if not 100%, we would sell the furnace. And then, when you're installing it, you would have to install an LP kit to make it work with propane because the furnace was designed to work with both, but ultimately from the factory, it would have the valve and all of that to work with natural gas. How long does it take to become an installer? And can you go from service tech to installer? So I think there's exceptions to every rule, right? But most guys in our trade, I would say this is probably the case. And that is if you go to an HVAC company, most companies you're going to start out probably as an installer of some type. You're going to be a helper possibly, and you're going to be uh, most likely start out as an installer and have to work your way up to becoming a service tech. How long does it take to become an installer? I mean, usually most companies will start you out right away. And again, you're going to have to be with somebody with experience, but you can just start out and, as long as you're willing to start from the bottom, if you will, then you could start out and become an installer. 6 weeks, there's a boot camp in Alabama for HVAC. Hard to believe that you can learn to be a technician that fast. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure those technicians that come out of there are pretty good, but there's still so much that I'm sure they've got to learn. I mean, there's no way you could take a 6-week course and come out of there fully trained. It's just not possible. There's no way you could learn our entire trade in 6 weeks. And not and you might say, well, Josh, I'm not saying they learn the entire trade. I don't think that they would come out of that 6-week course and be able to be on their own. It just wouldn't happen. All right, time to go spend time with family. My wife is just asking why I go 8 to 10 hours of HVAC work and then spend all evening thinking about it. I got 3 minutes. Well, have a good night. Tell your wife that you are going to focus on her now, not HVAC. You're going to turn it off for the night. So have a great night. I appreciate you being here. Emery says, where did you go to trade school? The trade school I went to was called Valley Vocational Technical School. And I believe they have an HVAC program now, but back then they did not have a program when I went through there. They only had an electrical. Well, they had electrical and plumbing and a few others, but they did not have a HVAC program at the time. I actually told, I don't remember who it was, but I told somebody just a couple weeks ago. Who was I talking to? And they were telling me that school has that program now, and I said that the next time I'm up there, I might pop in and take a look at it. But shoot, it's been none of the people I learned from. I don't even think my original electrical teacher is there anymore, but I could be wrong. Service tech came to my mom's yesterday because the side panel on her outdoor condenser, and I asked him a few questions on installing package units. Do you like trade school will surpass college one day? Do I think trade school will surpass college? Uh, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. If you mean, do I think that there will come a day where we'll have more trade schools than college? Probably not. I mean, there's a bunch of both now, right? So I don't know. Maybe you could argue that there are more now, but I'm not really sure the number. Well, let's see if Google has anything to say about this. How many trade schools are in the US? So according to this, there are 7,424 trade and technical schools as of 2023, an increase of 1.9% from 2022. I know of one near me that's new. Um, and so this, you go down, and this one says 6,900. So obviously, there's been an increase. This website says there's 8,500. So let's just say let's go with the highest number there. Let's say there is 8,500 trade and technical schools. How many colleges are in the US? There are some 5,300. So according to Google, there are already more trade schools than colleges already. Um, Now the question becomes, can you go to a trade school and make more money than going to college? And I think the answer is yes. Um I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of that without, because people think you're being braggy. But let's just say I know lots of folks in our trade that did not go to college that make more money than some of the folks that I know that went to college. So of course you can make more money by going to trade school. I think if you play your cards right, you can make a decent living in our trade, and several trades, not just HVAC, electrical, plumbing, uh, you know, even tile guys and flooring guys. And if you work hard and even become a business owner someday, I think you can do just fine for yourself. He told me he only did service calls, and when he gets to work, all the installers are out on install jobs. Interesting. When he gets to work, all the installers are out on install jobs. I do know that some companies will start installs early to beat the heat. So if you're in a really hot area, maybe there's some, the units in the attic that can get super hot. And not only do I know that, I've done that. Me and my guys, we would at times beat the heat and start jobs super early if the homeowner allowed us to. So wish you had a call in option, Josh, or that we could join like your guests to ask questions. Always fun time. I've thought about stuff like that, Ryan, and I'm sure there's a way to do it. To be completely honest with you, the whole reason I avoid certain things and avoid having certain guests, there are people that have either asked to be on my show, or after talking to them and asking them to be on my show and learning what they're all about, then not having them on my show, or deciding to record a video with them, that would be edited, is the whole deal of cancel. If I have to control certain things. So if somebody called in and then decided to, say something horrible, live, YouTube could shut my channel down. And so it comes with a big risk there when you do things like that. But I hear you. I know that there's another show that I listen to where he's starting to do these things where you can call in and leave a voicemail, and then he will play the voicemail on his show and then give his answer. I've thought about doing different things like that. Maybe we'll get to that level someday. And then that, at least at that point, I could, make sure that nothing horrible gets said live on our channel. So Bruce says he's driving home from work right now. God bless you, man. Arch says, I guess some HVAC techs don't do installs. Correct. Yeah, that is correct. Automation and bots will replace some jobs in the trades and white collar jobs. Yeah, I mean, some. They're already replacing some of the manufacturing jobs out there. I don't know that we'll ever see a day where a robot can go to a house and fix an air conditioner, right? At least not in the way we know it, you know? But I mean, what do I know? With the advancements in AI and some of the other capabilities of some of these robots, I mean, Who knows? Maybe that robot could pull up to that house and, you know, walk or roll over to the unit and plug into it somehow, determine what's wrong. I mean, I don't know. Who knows, man? What a crazy world that would be. There's already robotic cars that self-drive and deliver pizzas. So my grandfather and uncle were plumbing and electrical contractors and made more money than my dad, who had a master's degree. Yeah, that's what I mean. And a lot of folks that go to college, it's not even that they don't make as much money, it's that they go in so much debt and that they don't become debt free at times, either, for decades to come, or if they do, become debt free earlier than that, then they obviously had to pay hard earned money to get that debt paid off. Whereas a lot of folks that go to trade schools, I'm not saying none of them go into any kind of debt, but it's not as much debt, you know? So Nervins says, do you still do plumbing work or mainly do HVAC work? So my company that I sold about 5 months ago, we did both, and I hold a master's license in both. But I now teach classes for HVAC specifically only. Ryan says that works both ways. I know plenty of college grads that make lots of money too. You can be successful with either route. True. There's exceptions to every rule, and there's obviously success stories on both fronts as well. Of course. Too many typos in this chat. Sometimes it's me, and then sometimes the chat can be its own language, right? My grandfather told me a lot of plumbers didn't like doing service calls and preferred rough-ins on construction sites. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. In fact, that's true for HVAC. There are guys in our trade that would only rather do new construction, and then there are guys in our trade that, like me, that would rather do no new construction. I wasn't, I'm not saying I never liked doing it, but the problem with a lot of new construction is all the corners cut today. A lot of builders, and I'm going to just say, I've said it before, so I'll say it again. I would say the majority, what percentage, I don't know, but the majority, and I'm talking to you, Mr. Builder, if you're watching this, the majority of builders cut corners just in the name of saving money and doing it cheap. And a lot of them will say, oh, well, not me, I'm the best at what I do. Almost every builder I've met think that they're the best at what they do. And almost every builder I've met cut corners. They don't do heating and air. That they will ask heating and air guys to cut corners. They will at times ask us to put ductwork in a small space in the name of making the space look nice. And instead of, giving the heating and air guy a proper chase, a proper area to run their ductwork and all of that. And it was always that was my biggest problem with new construction. I remember just not even a year ago, a guy called me. He had gotten my number from a colleague, and he said, hey, I'm a house developer. I've built a bunch of these houses. This is a true story. He said, I've built a bunch of these houses. I'm about to build another house, and I'd like to get an estimate from you to install a heating and air system in a house I'm building. I said, great. Do you have a heat load calculation? Have you had someone perform one? And he said, no, I've built this house multiple times. I know what size it needs. And I said, okay, well, as long as you're willing to put it in writing that you're not going to get a heat load calculation done correctly, and that that it needs to be a 2-ton. As long as I have that in writing, then fine, I'll give you a price. And so we started talking about the house, and then he says to me about, I don't know, 5 sentences later, you know what? Let's just go ahead and do a 2.5-ton. That way I'll know it's oversized, and then I'll know it'll cool the space just fine. And I said, wait. You told me that you've built this house multiple times and that you had a heat load calculation done and that it is going to be sized properly. And he says to me, you know what? You sound like the kind of guy that's going to hold me up, and I don't have time to be held up. I need to get this house built. And that, I just don't have time for you to be holding me up with all these ins and outs. And I said, you're 100% right. I am the kind of guy that's going to hold you up, and you probably should not hire me because I don't cut corners. So, not trying to be a jerk, but if it requires me to be a jerk, then fine. I would not cut corners. And again, the majority, the majority of houses built today, they are cutting corners. They're not doing proper load calculations. They're not doing proper manual J, manual D, manual S, among others. And they're just building it for the absolute cheapest, quickest way they can build it. And that was just never, I was not going to do that. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And most folks, the majority of houses being built, that's not their belief. Harold says, I have several estimates on furnace replacement and addition of AC, but nobody has done a heat load calculation or mentioned sizing of my existing ductwork. I guess they're guesstimating. I'll give a little grace on one thing, and that is, should every single house, especially replacement of system, because we're just talking specific, because I think if it's new construction, then yes, every single house should have a proper load calculation done. However, if you're replacing, and this is very controversial what I'm about to say, if you're replacing a heating and air system, do I think absolute every single one needs a load calculation to be done? Yes, they should, but there is some common sense there in that most load calculations that are being done, unless they know specifically what the R value of all of the, insulation and all that, a lot of the load calculating on that front is a guess anyway. And so there is some common sense there. If you've got a home that's had a 2.5-ton heating and air system in it for years, and the home is great and it heats and cools just fine, and there is no short cycling, and they haven't done, upgraded the windows to double pane windows, and they haven't, all these different things, they haven't changed the envelope of the home in any way. Should you still do a load calculation? Yes. And I'll just leave it at that. I'll just leave it at that, guys. This has been a great show tonight. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I will be back next week with a treat. The first thing, I got two things, and I'm still going to finish this chat, so don't click off. But two things that before I wrap this up in a little while, and that is, the first thing is, if you have not subscribed to the new channel, which is called HVAC Guide Live Show, you need to do that. I will not be showing up in just a couple more weeks. We will not be on the channel for the HVAC Guide for Homeowners YouTube channel. We will not be showing up there anymore. We'll still do the live show. We'll still be here every week, but we will not be showing up on that channel. You've got to subscribe to the HVAC Guide Live Show channel. And if you don't know how to get to it, just go to the channel for my other one and scroll all the way to the bottom. And it's right there. And you can click subscribe. Make sure you get subscribed to that. But the other thing is, next week, I am having a very, very, very special guest on our show. When I sold my company, it was very important to me who I sold my company to. I didn't want to just sell it to any old Tom, Dick, or Harry. And so there were companies that were out of town. They were looking to buy our company, and I don't want to get into numbers, but the money didn't matter to me as much as our customers and our employees being taken care of. And so because of that, our guest next week is going to be the folks that bought Griffin Air. So I'm excited to have them on our show next week. So make sure you're here next week. That's going to be a special episode with those folks. Their names are Ashley and Jamie Miller, and it's a brother and sister that own Miller Services in here in Virginia. And so make sure you're here next week. That'll be a fun show, and we'll be chatting with them. So that'll be a fun show. The last thing I'll say, make sure you subscribe to the new channel. But the last thing I'll say is this, and we end every show with this, and that is, if you know a good heating and air company, plumber, electrical, whatever, there's so many bad apples out there. Drop the good ones in the chat and where they're located. Let's show some love to those folks. Let's you just never know. You never know if you're located in Arizona and somebody else in your area in Arizona sees your message for a good company, picking on Arch right now. Drop the name of a good company in the chat. Arch says some European countries have apprenticeships leading to well-paying jobs in masonry, plumbing, electrical, etc. Yeah, they do things a little different over there. I just listened to a podcast a couple weeks ago where in certain companies in Europe, if you're not happy, they care about your happiness so much that they will pay you as long as you are still being a good employee and putting in a good day's work. They'll pay you to go to school to learn a different craft, if you will. So that particular podcast I was listening to, they had a person working for them that was in accounting, I think it was, for a large manufacturing company, and they paid for their schooling to go learn how to cut hair, to learn how to be a, what's the word, cosmetologist? Is that the word, cosmetologist? Cosmetologist, maybe they don't call it that over there. But just a hairdresser, basically. They paid for them to go to school for that, which I thought was really cool. The last HVAC contractor that came to our house said he couldn't do a manual J calculation because he wasn't NATE certified. Not true. There's softwares out there that you can do it. There's a new one right now. I believe it's called Conduit, but you can just take your phone and walk through the house and scan the house, and it will help you do the load calculation, which is really cool. Most of the HVAC contractors that came to our house gave us an estimate for 3.5 ton package heat pump, but 2 gave us an estimate for a 4-ton heat pump. I will say, if you're in a less humid state, the load calculations don't matter quite as, I'm not saying they don't matter at all. They don't matter as much as the more humid your state is, the worse off, the more worse things can happen, right? Technically, if you live in a dry climate, you could oversize that system. It could cool the space quicker and you don't have to worry about it, right? People that live in, say, Vegas don't have to worry about load calculations as much as, say, someone that lives in Miami, right? A humid environment, if you cool that space too fast and you don't remove enough humidity, you are going to have problems. I thought maybe they took into consideration the single windows and sliding doors and the poor insulation of the early 70s. Come on, man. They had great insulation in the 70s. I've seen on HVAC School 2 companies that use LiDAR sensors on, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So I think that company's called Conduit, or at least one of them. Company that bought Griffin Air, what brand did they offer, and did they like Daikin equipment? They are a Daikin Comfort Pro, which is part of the reason I chose them. An old German barber told me he was an apprentice for a mason, but when he immigrated to the United States, he went to cosmetology school and became a barber. That's a really cool story. I love just wholesome stories. In fact, I almost started a whole entire YouTube channel. One of my customers at Griffin Air, she was a principal at a high school, and she's told me so many cool stories about being a principal at a high school when the civil rights, all of that was taking place. So in the 60s and 70s, and being a principal at a high school during all of that. And I was like, man, I would love to just drink a cup of coffee, us sit down on each side of a of a table and you just share some stories. And she was just a great lady. Ms. Jackson, I know you'll never see this, but if you ever do, I appreciated my time getting to know you. So she's just such a cool person. Um, he was a good man. I still miss him when I go to get my hair cut. Oh man. I don't know why I'm like getting kind of like not teary eyed, but that emotional warm fuzzies feeling all of a sudden thinking about Miss Jackson and this barber, this German barber. So anyway, um, very cool. Again, if you're not subscribed to the new channel, HVAC Guide Live Show, make sure you subscribe to that. That said, we will be back next week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Find out what that time is in your area. And as always, until then, make it a great week. Have a great night.